It's Saturday night once again, and we are live. So, if decluttering has been on your mind for the entire pandemic period and you have questions around it and you don't know where to begin, let's welcome our very expert, Rita Wilkins. Rita Wilkins, thank you for coming here.
Hi, I'm Rita Wilkins, also known as the Downsizing Designer. I live in Philadelphia, PA. And thank you, Dr. Hama, for asking me to join you today to talk about downsizing, decluttering, and the whole impact of living with less.
No,
So,
pleasure's all mine. So, in fact, before we begin, I want to give a little bit of introduction about Rita so that you all know, how well known she is nationally. So, Rita Wilkins is a nationally recognized interior design and lifestyle design expert. She is known as the downsizing designer. She is a TEDx speaker and she is the author of a bestseller book called the Downsize Your Life, Upgrade Your Lifestyle. She has designed thousands of residential and commercial interiors. She speaks to audiences on the impact of living abundantly with less and challenges her audiences to disrupt their status quo thinking so they can have more time, money, and freedom to pursue what actually matters to them now. So, Rita, tell us about what you do and how you do it.
well, thank you. So I have been an interior designer for over 35 years. I've had a company in the Philadelphia area, all of that, and we've done work all over the United States, everything from Supreme Court Justice chambers to corporate penthouses to tiny kitchens to tiny houses. And having that as my background, several years ago, my son was serving in the Peace Corps in Senegal, West Africa. And he invited me to visit him for a month. And I stayed in his tiny little hut. And that trip changed my life. So even though I'm from a world of beautiful stuff, architecture, and all of those things, my life changed because of that trip. And here's why. I, for the first time, experienced people who had so little, but they were happy. So when I returned to my big, and I'm going to say big because it was big, it was a 5,000 square foot home. Now in America, that's still a big house. It's not as big as some, but it was the fact that I was a designer. I built it. I could do it, but I came back home from Senegal and I walked into my big, beautiful designer home, and it was like the lights went out for me. None of it mattered anymore. And it was like what went on. And really what happened was I wanted that simple life that I had been experiencing for an entire month. And I looked around my big house, and as beautiful as it was a lot of work. And it was a lot of time, a lot of money, and it was sucking away the life that I had. And so that's the beginning of my journey. And it took approximately a year for me to finally say, I don't think I want this anymore, and to actually make a choice to downsize my physical stuff, downsize my life, so I could have a higher quality of life. And that's
So that's a very very tough call to take. I'm sure.
Yeah.
So just for clarity, for the audiences, I want you to explain what do you mean by downsizing.
Okay. So, in the corporate world, downsizing has a negative connotation. In my design world and my lifestyle design world, it has a positive connotation, because the reality is, not just in my country, but in yours, people do collect a lot of stuff, and they continue to accumulate and buy more. We're in the holiday season right here in America right now, and people were going crazy yesterday for Black Friday so they could buy things on sale. But the question becomes, do you really need them? So downsizing there's essentially two elements to it. One is your physical stuff. So my 5,000 square foot home, I downsized by 95%, and I now live on 5% of what I once owned. I gave away 95% of my stuff to people who needed it or wanted it. And frankly, I've never been happier. I have all I want and all I need. So there's the physical component, but there's also the mental decluttering. So when you think about our lives, we and him and I were talking about this prior. We carry around things with us like we should do this, and why should we? Because our parents, our society tells us we should have a big house, we should have a big job, we should have this. All right, and all I'm asking people to do when they downsize is to think about, is that what you want? And then the other one is having to. So in this particular time frame, a lot of people have to go to this party, they have to do this, they have to get that degree. And all I say to people, and this is part of the disruption, it's part of being a designer, I ask a lot of questions and I challenge people to simply think, is that what you really want? So there's the physical downsizing, and then there's the mental decluttering and letting go of things that hold you back. So other things that hold us back are our negative self-talk. I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not skinny enough, whatever it is. We all say that to ourselves. And that's a clutter that's in our brain that when we start to let go of that, we have more freedom and we're happier because of it. So there's the physical downsizing and the mental decluttering. And that's the
So,
second I get to do every day.
yeah. So, this is real profound. Even if you're decluttering at a physical level, where you're, say, removing stuff and living with less, it is also important to declutter your mental space. So, it is a combination of both, which is the key.
It is. And what was so interesting for me, this was a journey. I wish I could say I was so smart that I anticipated all of this would happen, but I wasn't. I just listened. So after coming back from Senegal, after realizing the physical stuff didn't matter to me anymore, and then I downsized, what I didn't realize is the impact. And on the other side, and I still remember, one of the first evenings I was sitting here in my beautiful little jewel box apartment in Philadelphia, right in historic Philadelphia. I said, wow, I have more time than I have ever had in my life, or at least that I could remember, and I have more freedom. And what I also then ultimately realized is I have so much more money because I don't have all of those things I have to take care of. So some of the benefits and the almost immediate outcomes were more time, more freedom, and more money. And then I said, well, what do I want to do with that? And so, when you suddenly have more time, you can think about what really matters to me. What do I really want to do? And so for me, it's always been travel, being with family, friends. And so I set up kind of an interesting, I don't know, lifestyle that I would travel every other month to a place I've never been. So that was fun. But then also in my company, which I've had for 35 years, I went into my team and I said, what would you think of working only 3 days? And then you have 4 days to play. So I created a business model called Work 3 and Play 4. And
Wow.
and I really did that all the way up until COVID, and we kept growing the company in spite of working less. And the reason is we just developed systems that made us much more efficient, more productive. We were all staying in our lane, doing what we love, and kind of delegating the rest. And so the Work 3 Play 4 model has really been something that changed my life. So that was all the impact of downsizing. So.
So I even heard in one of your talks that you actually grew 27% of your business when you implemented this particular new model of work 3 days and play 4 days,
Mhm.
which is amazing.
Well, I wish, again, I said that I wish that I had thought, well, it was, I intended this. It was an outcome. And when I started listening to, wow, what's possible? And then the real question became, what do I really want? And after working, 5-6 days for almost all of my business life, I said, no, I don't want that anymore. So once you decide this is what you do want and what you don't want, life gets really easy because you're starting to make choices. You're not letting the world make choices for you.
Mm.
And that's when you have a little higher, well, a lot higher quality of life, because you're running your life. You're not letting the world run your life. So
Well said.
part of my job every day, whether I'm an interior designer or whether I'm a lifestyle designer, is all I do is I question people to think about what do they really want and have them disrupt that crazy cycle. So for me, working full time, I was raising, young teenage boys at the time. And, my life was just crazy and it was spinning out of control. And in many ways, that's where people live their daily life. So was I. So I think that's why people relate to my story. I had to do something to stop that crazy cycle, or I might have gone crazy. But the reality is, I had no time, I had no money, and I had no freedom. And when I downsized, I suddenly had more time, more money, more freedom to really pursue what matters most to me.
Oh my God. I
It's
mean,
really
whoever
difficult.
thought giving away things would give you more money, more time, more freedom?
Yeah.
That's real amazing. So, Rita, I want to come to the basics, for people who are probably hearing this concept for the first time, and we are here right now. How do we begin the whole downsizing journey?
Okay. So the number one thing is that you start to notice, you become aware of, wow, I've got a lot of stuff. And I think the pandemic in many ways has helped people because many people have now had to work, from home. And they started to notice, that bookcase, I don't even know what's in it anymore because I've looked at it for, 20 years, or the boxes or the papers or what the clothing that you never use or that have piled up. So in many ways, the pandemic has given us the gift of time to see something we weren't seeing before. We were too busy before. And now,
Yeah.
when you start noticing the piles or the clutter or the too much or the duplicates, triplicates, you start to say, do I really need all of this? And in my case, I said, no, I don't need 11 closets and 9 rolling racks filled with clothes, which is crazy now that I think about it. Now I have one closet and everything fits me. So the process is, number one, to become aware. And then something inside might shift in you like it did in me. Like, no, this is not who I am. I don't want all this stuff. I don't need all this stuff. Other people might. So for me, the gift of giving so much of my stuff to people who needed it or wanted it made all the difference for me. So yes, I was giving up my kitchen table that I loved, but it went to an Hispanic family that worked for me for years. And right now I could see them sitting around that kitchen table having breakfast. That gives me great joy. So you notice, and then you make a decision. I don't want this anymore. And then what is the process? So the process is, and I recommend this, I started in my kitchen, which is not the best place to start. my my daughter actually is from India, and she and my son came one weekend. They said, okay, let's go ahead and get started. And I said, well, where should we start? We'll start in the kitchen. Well, it's not the easiest place to downsize or declutter. So, but we started in the kitchen, and I remember Chaitanya opening one of my drawers, and she looked in and she said, Rita, do you really need 4 sets of measuring spoons? And she's like this big. And I remember thinking, no, I don't think I do. But anyway, so so there was a box, and she said, okay, well, pick one. And so she put the other three in the box. And I thought, oh my God, this is what it's going to be like for this entire house. But anyway, it was, so you start one drawer at a time, one shelf at a time, one closet at a time. Don't take it all on because it will become overwhelming. So for 1 month prior to my daughter-in-law and my son and my family coming to help me, I actually tried to do this big house all by myself for 30 days. And for 30 days, I cried. I remember thinking, I mean, I remember just sitting there feeling like, where do I even begin? And I got so overwhelmed. So a number three step, I guess it would be, is to form a team of family, friends. Just say, look, I want to downsize. I don't need all this stuff. I want to declutter. Can you help me? And engage your family. And they may say no, but those say yes. So for every weekend on a Saturday and a Sunday, I would have a team of family, friends, and just maybe 3 or 4 people that would come and help me. And we would say, let's just attack this one small area of my basement, my attic, whatever it was. So at least you can get that accomplished. So you literally get rid of those things. You have a box for donate, a box for giveaway, and a box for, for keeping, obviously. So with that in mind, you do it week by week by week. And so it took me a year, but it ultimately happened. So it's really, I don't know, I strongly recommend one drawer at a time. So we all have a junk drawer. And that's kind of an interesting place to start because you call it a junk drawer already. So what could you get rid of in that junk drawer? How can you organize it? Another place to start would be, say, piles of paper, piles of books. So mail that comes in the door. Where do you put your mail? So sometimes people will just let it pile up, pile up, pile up. The goal is to day by day start making or changing your habits to deal with the mail. So when you think about decluttering is essentially a deferred decision. So when you defer that decision to deal with your mail, or rather than putting your clothes away, you put them on the chair, and then the next night you put them on the chair, the next night you put them on the chair. Each one of those is a deferred decision, and that's what creates clutter. Okay. Hem, I think I've lost you.
I think there's a problem with the sound. I can't really hear you. Yeah, just give me a sec. Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Rita, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, I can't. So, guys, just excuses, just stay on. I'm just going to refresh the page because I can't hear Rita.
Okay.
Okay, am I audible now?
I can hear you.
Okay, so moving ahead, Rita, also tell us, you told us the first step, become aware of what you really have in your house and basically start from there. And take small projects at a time and don't try to take a lot of projects so that, you can be focused and you can concentrate and complete the task as well. What next? What next?
So one thing that I really should have put in first is to Determine what matters most to you. So for me, what mattered most in my downsizing journey was that I could live with less, like they had in Senegal, and that I had that simple, joy filled life. That meant so much to me. So that during the journey, because you will get stopped, you will be confronted, you'll want to quit. So when you have that one thing in your mind, like I wanted that simple, joy filled life. So in the worst of times, I would remind myself, look, Rita, that's what you said you wanted. So when you decide, I want to live in a smaller home, I don't need all of this stuff. I want more time to travel, more time to be with my family, my grandchildren. That's where you start, because that's in your heart and that won't go away. And that's the driving force that will keep you going. So after, you start the process, I'm a strong believer in having plans and a strategy. So my strategy was over the course of a year to every weekend, and there were a few that we missed, have a team of people come and help you so that you're not alone. So it's like surrounding people that love you, care about you, and will help you. And of course, it goes the other way too. You'll help them. So then you start to see results. And then the fun part was, and I created what I call a decluttering party. So we would only work for 4 hours at a time. We would work in 50-minute increments, set an alarm, and we'd take a little break, and then we come back for 4 hours. And then after that 4 hours, we had a party. So we had wine, we had food, and that's what made it fun. So I have a year of wonderful memories of downsizing. So I actually created a YouTube video about how to make downsizing easy, effective, and fun. And most people, when they say, well, this is not going to be fun, if you tell yourself it's not going to be fun, it's not going to be fun. But if you make it fun, then it will be. Make it a game.
That's lovely. We also have, in fact, one of our audiences saying to your previous comment that, like Lord Kabir Das, who is basically Indian saint, once said that God give me only so much that I'm able to feed my family and a guest who might visit me. So
Mm.
that's really how it goes.
That's
Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah, yeah. That's, life can
yeah,
be very simple when you focus on what matters most. So I'm a proponent
yeah.
of, having family dinners, family conversations, and I know your country, it's just so important. Family is so important. So what matters more than that? So when you have all of these things taking up that time, that money, that energy, it detracts from what really matters to you. So it's all about focus. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Rita, coming to the next very related question, I did go through this whole fundamentals of your ABC of decluttering, and I really love it. I really love it. I'm going to be implementing it, but I want you to also describe to our audiences about the ABC of decluttering.
Okay. So you can actually go to my YouTube video, Rita Wilkins, and you could watch that video. You can also go to my website and you can print out. My website is Rita Wilkins at ritawilkins.com. So there's a free download. So the ABCs of downsizing. As a designer, we do big buildings and you have to have a plan. So you have to have, so you could get overwhelmed if you walk into an older building and you say, we're going to renovate this, or you could chunk it down into smaller bites. So I said, well, what could be easier than ABC? Okay, let's create a plan that is as simple as the ABCs. So it goes like this. You walk through your home and you create and with little stickies, colored stickies, and you have an A list, a B list, and a C list. So the A list is, I love that I'm keeping that. I'm going to jump over to the C list because that's easy. Things you don't want. You go through your house and you say, that old thing, or I've never used that, or I will never use, I've never used it before. Why would I use it now? So you start to say, these are the things I want. These are the things I don't want. Then you go to the B list, and the B list, they're a little harder. For me, it was clothing. Clothing was very hard to get rid of. But then I had a friend come over and she had me try on every single piece I did. And she would look at me and she'd say, Rita, that looks terrible on you. So it would go into that pile. But whatever your B list is, and sometimes for people it's sentimental furniture that has been passed down in your family. So family heirlooms. It could be furniture or something that you've collected. It could be artwork. It could be photos. The B list is a little bit harder. But once you've done your A list and your C list, then you focus a little bit at a time on your B list. So once you've kind of identified all of these things, and you just take one room at a time, all of your A list items go over here. The C list actually leaves your home. So you're either going to sell it, you're going to donate it, or you're going to give it away to someone who wants it. And they must come and pick it up then. So you start to see that the house gets more, there's more space. I don't have all that stuff anymore. And then the B list is the one that you just have to keep, working at day after day after day. So that's essentially the A, B, C list. So, once you can sell it, donate it, give it away, or keep it, those are the things that will help you ultimately get rid of things. And I recommend just doing an area at a time, a room at a time, and not to focus on the whole big project because it'll overwhelm you. So that's why I created ABCs.
That's really amazing. Also, here I want to touch base on one aspect that doing the ABC steps may not be easy because there are moments that you don't want to let go of some aspects of your clothing because you have some memories with it. So how do you deal with that really? How do you recommend that one deal with it?
Right. So for sure, there's going to be things that you get stuck on. For me, there were little sentimental things. Like one was an alarm clock that my dad used to wind every night, and I would hear him winding that. And when I saw that clock sitting in a box, it just made me cry. And my sister was there at the time, and she said, Rita, Dad would not want you to keep this clock. You're downsizing. So we took a picture of it, and I wrote a story about it. Why would this clock make mom or grandma cry? And so my children and my grandchildren now will have that memory, like, why did a clock make you cry? So there will be sentimental things in your life that are very hard to let go of. But what you have to remember is that we make stuff mean something. So I made clothing mean, I was successful. I made the big house mean that I was successful. But that wasn't true. It had to come from within me that I was a success. I didn't have to prove myself anymore. So when you discover, why are you holding on to this? Now, some people will say, and I think we referred to this in our original conversation, Hema, some people will say, well, I might need it someday. And, the reality is someday is not a day of the week. So someday may never come. And when you say, well, I haven't used it in 3 years, 5 years, what makes me think I would use it someday? And that someday stuff is taking up a lot of space in your home. And that's a category that's really hard for people. Another one is, I spent so much money for it. So one of my clients spent a lot of money on this particular silk jacket. And it didn't look good on her, but she had it in her closet because she spent so much money on it. And so I said, okay, well, you could continue to let it take up space in your closet, or you could choose to just let it go. So there's a muscle that you can develop, just like going to the gym. If you go to the gym, 1 day a week, you can't expect much. If you go 3 days or 5 days, you start to expect a little bit more. So in the process of downsizing, you can develop a letting go muscle. And that letting go muscle means it gets easier. You get stronger, you get better at it. And so my client called me one day, not that long ago, and she said, Rita, you know that jacket? And I said, yeah, I know. She said, I finally let it go. And she said, I just got, it didn't mean anything to me anymore. And I realized I was holding on to something that I was just allowing myself to make it mean that I spent a lot of money and I didn't want to waste money. So, there's that someday category. There's the category of, I spent so much money on it. There's the other category of, my mom gave it to me. My grandmother gave it to me. And there's a methodology right now. I don't know if you've heard of the book Swedish Death Cleaning. It's kind of a horrible name, but it's a methodology of you getting rid of your stuff now so that your children won't have to get rid of it when you are gone. So in our country right now, a lot of baby boomers like me, we've collected a lot of stuff. And so one of the passions that I have is that we as baby boomers don't put that burden on our children for someday when we're gone. So the Swedish death cleaning methodology, which I've embraced, is to invite your children into your home and walk through with them with a notebook and say, what we're here for today is I want you to tell me what you want when I'm gone or what you don't want. And in our country, so many of our kids are saying, we don't want all of your stuff. They call it the brown furniture. That's all the mahogany furniture we've collected all those years. So you walk through and you create a list of they want this, they don't want that. Now, what that does is it gives you the freedom to let go of it, because you might have been saving it for your kids because for sure you thought they would want that. But the reality is they may not. In our country, our younger people are living in much smaller abodes right now. They will probably never collect the amount of stuff that we baby boomers did. So they don't have room for it. They're smart and they say, we don't want it. And so then, it's giving you the freedom, the license to letting it go without the guilt. So when we have our parents' dinnerware, china, crystal, furniture, we feel guilty because they probably wanted us to have it. So we can give our children a gift of freedom by not making them feel guilty about the same things we might have felt guilty about.
I think I think loads of things to learn from this one, and I have a lot of comments from our audience also, and there are some very good, insightful comments. There is one question that I will take from audience, and we have the audience talk about what about people who look for abundance, where you have seen people collecting 500 pairs of shoes and who love shopping. What should they do? People who love shopping.
I love this question. And actually, it's kind of funny. And the reason I'm laughing is I have not shopped in 2 years. And if you knew me, I used to shop every single weekend. I was the ultimate, the consummate shopper. So I totally get the shopping thing. But when I downsized during that entire journey, I had to ask myself some very hard questions. Why am I shopping? I'm single. I'd just gone through a divorce and I was lonely. So shopping was filling a gap for me, which was loneliness. Now, that was just me. That's not for everyone. But when I discovered why I was shopping so much, why did my closets get filled with clothes with tags on them still? I had to face my reality, and my reality was I was shopping to fill that loneliness gap. So that's not the case for everyone. So some people just do love shopping, and you know what? If that gives you happiness, then do it. But there comes a point where, and I had to make this reality for myself, more stuff didn't make me happier. And that was a bottom line. I said, it's like this never ending cycle of you buy more, more, more. Does that mean you're happier? And I had to say, no, it didn't make me happier. So then you go back to what does make you happy. And what I discerned in that journey was I love being with my family, with my friends, with people. I love doing my work. And shopping and adding more to that was not adding happiness. So one thing I would just recommend if you are a shopper, and I'm so glad we have this question, because right now in America, we have Black Friday and then we have the holiday season. I just kind of look at, when you have less, you actually appreciate what you have more. It's kind of an interesting paradox, but when I moved to my tiny apartment, I only took stuff that I loved. And everything else was given away to other people that wanted it or needed it. So this never-ending cycle of buy, it never ends. And so the question becomes, what is enough? And when do you ever arrive at that? And so for me, it was more that I was not enough. I had to prove that I could build a big house. I had to prove, that I could buy all of this stuff. But once I disrupted that thinking, I said, this is not who I am. Closets full of stuff don't make me happy. So a gift that I gave myself was to say, I am enough and I have enough and I'm happy. Excuse me.
Are you okay?
I'm going to get some water. Excuse me. Okay, I'm good.
We'll wait for you. No
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. So, once you realize that more stuff doesn't make you happy, then you might say, well, what would make you happy? So I guess I have this little mantra, more stuff doesn't make me happy, but more time with my loved ones does make me happy. And when I have less stuff, less property to deal with, less clothing to deal with, less big house to deal with, I had more time and more freedom to be with people that I loved. And that's the joy of living with less, is that you now have that ability. I hope that helped. I don't know if it did or not.
So, we have a lot of comments from our audiences, and thank you so much, people, for giving these comments. People say that Lata is saying, I have realized that less is more. Yes, it is. And Darpan says, yes, this is so true. So, it's amazing. And tell us now, Rita, how do we move to mental decluttering? Now we've heard about physical space decluttering, the ABC method, and the other methods you spoke about. How about mental decluttering? What is your suggestion for that?
Okay. Well, I'll go back to one drawer at a time, one shelf at a time, one closet at a time. If you were to start today, and this is the whole thing, you can't just say, well, tomorrow, because tomorrow never comes. So if you were to say today, and I know that it's 9 o'clock-ish there, I would say, where do I want to start? What little thing can I do right now to start decluttering what I have, maybe living with less, living a simpler life with less. And one of the things you can also do is to stop buying more. I always feel so harsh when I say that. But, as long as we have incoming and then there's outgoing, it all, it doesn't make any difference, right? So, but if you have more outgoing stuff, giving things to people who want it or need it, and for sure there are, um, I'm going to say, let's just talk about a pantry right now. So I used to have a pantry filled with food because I would go to Costco or someplace like that. Well, I'm a single woman. What was I thinking? I guess I was thinking I was buying for my children still. But if you go through your pantry and foods that are still good, someone might need those right now. Go through your clothing and maybe one section of your clothing closet. Maybe it's summer clothes, winter clothes, whatever it is, but just say, have I worn this all year? Will I wear it again? Does it look good on me? And if the answer is no, then give it away. People need what we have excess of. It's not to say to detract from your lifestyle, but it's to help someone else that doesn't have it as good as you do. So start one drawer at a time, one closet at a time, and there's joy in giving things to other people who need it or want it. And once that catches on, it really gets easy. So for me, there was a winter day that I was downsizing, and I always picked bad weather days to downsize because otherwise I wanted to go out and have some fun. But it was a winter day, it was snowing, and that's a perfect day to downsize. So I picked a master bedroom closet. And I walked in that closet and I just started crying because I saw tags on clothing that I had never worn. And at the time, I was the president of a nonprofit for women, and we provided education and college degrees, college education money, so these women could go through college. Well, here I'm doing that on one side of my life, and the other side, I've got this one of many closets filled with clothes with tags on them. And that's what made me cry. I said, Rita, there are women who are starting out in life, starting careers, and look at these beautiful suits that you've never worn. And they were a different size, or they were maybe outdated for me, whatever. So that day was a big reckoning for me. So I took out every single piece of clothing that I would never wear and put it in a box. And the goal is always with downsizing is to do something about it instantly. So don't let it sit in your garage or in the house anywhere. Get rid of it. So I got in my car and I drove it to a women's shelter. And these women came out and they were so grateful to say, it's so beautiful. And so here it's sitting in my closet. And now the other side of it is that someone's using it. Now that was a gift to me. And it was such a realization, like, wow, I have so much, they have so little. And what I have, that I don't want or need, I can give away to someone else. So anyway, I wrote something in my book called The Closet That Made Me Cry. And it was essentially that story. And to this day, it still brings tears to my eyes to think how grateful they were for something that I no longer wanted or needed.
Yeah, this it gives me a lot of things to think about and probably go and implement in my life as well. So I have one of our audience also asking that they think that mental decluttering is more important, and how do you get that self control from not probably I'm assuming this not going to shop or pick it up from the stores when it's showing 50% Black Friday sale.
Okay. So I think the question is about mental decluttering. How to do that? Is that right? Okay. So mental decluttering, when you think about all the stuff we carry around in our heads from things that have happened to us in our past. So for sure, we've all had bad things happen to us. But when you start releasing that, letting that go, because letting go is a key word in downsizing, letting go of that anger, that guilt, that resentment, those are all things that you have to do some head work. You have to be willing to forgive. You have to be willing to give up that anger, that frustration, whatever it is. But each time you give that up, you're making more room for what really matters to you. So when you think about carrying around anger, frustration, venom, that takes up a lot of headspace. And how could you possibly be happy with that? So the mental decluttering process does take time. In my mind, it's actually far harder than the physical downsizing. And it's once you get to the point where you can forgive, forget, let go of, you now have a whole different life ahead of you. And so the other thing is that we attach ourselves to to physical stuff, so that's also part of the head game. Like, why am I attached to clothing? Why am I attached to a big house? Attached is something you have to discern why you are allowing that to take up headroom. So anyway, it's all about just taking your head and saying, okay, I'm going to free that space up too. I'm going to do the ABCs of downsizing in my head. That's actually a good article. I could write that one. So, anyway, the other thing about mental decluttering is allowing other people to run your life. So you should have that kind of degree. You should have that kind of job. And you might want that yourself. But women that I have mentored, and I also do coaching, one particular one, she was professionally trained to be an attorney, and she hated it. Every single day she would get up and she hated what she was doing. Well, it was because from youth she was told you should be an attorney or a doctor or whatever, but she was being driven by outside forces to say this is what you should do. And when I met her, she told me how unhappy she was about her career, and she was very successful at what she was doing financially, but she was unhappy inside. That's a very big price to pay. So what ultimately happened, I mentored her for a couple of months, and she discerned, oh, it was, my parents, my family, everybody else is lawyers or doctors, so I should be one too. But when she discerned, how can I use my legal background to follow her passion? And her passion was working for a particular nonprofit. So she now is an executive director for this nonprofit, still using her law background. So parlaying her, rather than working for a corporate law firm, she now works for a nonprofit, making less money, but happier than she's ever been. So part of the mental decluttering is all of the shoulds and the have tos and all of those expectations that other people have of us. This is our life. It's not their life. And at some point, you can choose. And this is, life is all a choice. So you can choose to be unhappy. You can choose to stay in that job. You can choose to stay in the big house. You can choose to continue shopping, or you can choose not to. And there's no judgment there. It's just like, what is it that you want for your life? And going back to, the bottom line is being in alignment with what matters most to you. And, once you're there, you say, this matters so much to me. This is what I want. This is what I don't want. And so you start decluttering those things that you don't want in your life and letting them go. And then you put back in what you want more of. You want more time with your family. You want a more fulfilling profession. You want to spend your time doing XYZ. So that's all about choice. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me, but I cannot hear you. Okay.
Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
I can hear you again.
Yeah, you can hear me again? Okay, just a moment. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm so sorry for this. I think the live stream platform that I'm using is giving a lot of hiccups. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Yeah, just a sec.
Technology, right?
Yeah, I know technology. So, I'm going to take up one more question on one of the aspects that you mentioned last time, which was related to working 3 days a week. So, Sonali wants to know whether that works well. How does that really work?
So there's a bit of an echo. I think I heard you.
Okay.
Um,
I'm going to mute myself so you can talk about it.
yeah. There's a really bad echo, Hema. Much better. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So do you mind repeating your question? Okay. It was something about working 3 and playing 4. I'm not seeing it on my screen. Can you just repeat the question? If you just tell me what the question is, I think I can respond because I don't see it on my screen. I can hear you. Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I love speaking about what I do because it has made a difference. And now I can make a difference all over the world. So when you downsize your life, you upgrade your lifestyle. In other words, you're making more room for the life that you really want. And so many of you have had a lot of success in life. I'm sure of that. But you might be saying, well, what's missing? And what you might want to be looking at is how could I have the life that I really want? So, as a designer, it's about designing lives, designing spaces. So, one of the things that, so one of the most important things that you are living, one of the most important things to discover is what matters most to you. And once you are living in alignment with that, life gets so easy. So for me, and I'll go back to my story, living with less mattered far more than having all this beautiful stuff. And so the other thing is living intentionally each day. Life is a choice. So we can choose to be present in our lives, or we can choose to let busyness take over our lives. So it's living with what matters most to you, and it's living intentionally day by day, moment by moment, and making the choices. And of course, my mantra is to live with less so you can actually live more. When you have less stuff, less clutter, you can then appreciate more of what you have. And the last thing is to slow down. So we're far too busy in our lives, and when we take time to appreciate the little moments, the little things. Um, I have a granddaughter now, and just watching her play has slowed me down. It just made me have so much joy by just simply taking the time to watch how she discovers everything newly. So, in many ways, by decluttering, you can discover your whole new life that's ahead of you. You're welcome. I've thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and God bless you all.